Welcome to the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association's Patients Come First podcast series. Podcast episodes are available on VHHA.com and on popular podcast hosting apps, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, and many others. We're a member of the Public Health Podcast Network, the Virginia Audio Collective, and the Family Podcast Network. Podcast episodes air Sundays at noon on 100.5 FM, 92.7 FM, and 820 AM across Central Virginia, 1650 AM in Hampton Roads, 105.1 FM and 1050 AM in Lynchburg, and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. on 93.9 FM in Richmond. Please send questions, comments, feedback, or guest suggestions to pcfpodcast@vhha.com. Again, that's pcfpodcast@vhha.com. And today we're pleased to be joined by Joe Bamisile, a Virginia Commonwealth University student-athlete on the basketball team who is pursuing a master's degree in the classroom at the VCU College of Health Professions. He joins us for a conversation about his life, his interest in rehabilitation and mental health counseling studies, the hoop game, his work developing a mental health app, and more. So with that, welcome to the program, Joe. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It means a lot.
Well, we're delighted to speak with you today. So let's dive right in. It's our custom to start episodes by getting to know our guests a little better. What we know about you, according to the interwebs, Joe, is that you've already completed your undergraduate degree and you're now pursuing a master's degree. Coming out of high school in Chesterfield County, you were a nationally ranked basketball prospect. You've since played for Virginia Tech, George Washington, Oklahoma, and VCU, where you currently play guard for the men's basketball team. You're also an app developer, and you host a basketball camp. Those are, I'm sure, just a few highlights of your life, but I imagine that your unique personal story has many more layers to it. So, to start with, what else should we know about you as a person and your story?
Probably the biggest thing is my faith. I have a huge faith in God. You know, there's a lot of words for God nowadays, so specifically in Jesus. That's probably a huge part of my life. I also meditate every day. I have a dog. I enjoy walking my dog. And other than that, I'm just pretty average dude. Like I do what almost everyone else does every day, to the addition of the things you said, but I just love life and I enjoy getting to do the things that, you know, I get blessed to do.
Well, it sounds like you've got a great positive outlook on life, and I appreciate you sharing your faith and your personal testimony. You mentioned your dog. What's your dog's name? What kind of dog is it?
Oh, her name's Kiko. She's with me right now. She's a Shiba Inu. She's 2 years old, and she's the brownish-orange version of the Shiba Inu.
Well, dogs truly are man's best friend. I've had dogs in my house for probably the last 20 years, and I certainly can attest to the fact that even on the toughest days, a dog can brighten your day a little bit. So we love to hear about the furry four-legged family members here on the podcast. For the benefit of our listeners, we invited Joe to join the podcast to talk about his mental health app, which is Maunda. In reading about that project, Joe, I gather you developed it as a capstone project during your undergraduate studies with the support and encouragement of your professors. If you would, tell me more about the inspiration for and the evolution of that project.
So the inspiration for it came from when I left Oklahoma. I was in a space where 2 years prior to that, I was struggling with some anxiety and self-isolation, which was leading me to be depressed. And then the following year, my father had experienced a really bad heart issue, which caused me to want to move back home, not only to support him, but to support my mom, who, you know, had started to have to carry, larger burdens, in terms of her day-to-day life. I started to realize that, mental health doesn't only exist for me. It's a problem that exists for everyone. So I started coming up with the idea, creating an application. And then over the course of the fall semester of my senior year, I really fleshed out the idea, pairing it with my class and asking questions and seeing how an audience would receive it. And then my second semester, it was really about rolling out how this would work, not anymore in a theoretical place, but in a practical place, and giving it to an audience. So figuring out the logistics of what my audience would be, what my targets are, why it's beneficial, why it's useful, and having to think through the execution of the idea more so than just the idea itself.
And from a user perspective, tell me about the features of the app and the intention behind them.
Yeah, so our goal was to create, I have a co-founder, his name is Nabil Rezqui. He's also been a huge part of this, and I don't want to leave him out. But a huge part of this has been that we're trying to create basically the healthiest social media platform. And the first rollout of it was the version that exists currently. We wanted to make sure we got users to be able to experience the mental health side of it, which right now is meditation. You can do group meditations with people, which is nuance in comparison to what exists now on, most meditation kind of apps. You can basically, whether you are right beside someone or thousands of miles apart, you can go on your phone and schedule to do a group meditation with anyone. And you can do this with up to one person, and that number can go up to 20. You essentially are forming this group of people to meditate with. Meditating is such a hard thing to do on your own, so adding this group function to it, we thought would be really beneficial for the first stage of the app that's out currently. Other features, we have affirmations on there. We have this thing called the Vanishing Journal, very similar to the concept of Snapchat, where you journal your whole day. We ask you 5 questions, and when you hit submit, it disappears. We no longer have access to it, nor do you, and it's kind of teaching a person to reflect and let go. And then we have a global leaderboard where you can semi-compete with other people in terms of how much you're spending time by yourself. We have a accountability streak where if you meditate or journal, it counts as doing something positive for your mental health that day. And then we also have the ability to, once you meditate, you can actually post a story, and your friends and your family or coworkers, whoever you have on the app, can see that you posted a story. But we came out with the kind of stripped, more mental health version of it in April. And now we are going more towards, within the next month, we're going to have all the social features that are on apps like Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat more so implemented into what we have currently. But we wanted to get the ball rolling for what users needed and get proper feedback so that we can make sure by the time we get to phase 2 of it in another month or so, that everyone is satisfied with our product.
And what has that feedback been like so far?
Feedback's been people to make it more like a social media application. There should more so be like a feed. People wanted to be able to meditate for shorter durations of time. Like an ability to not necessarily just have your contacts upload, where it's more like the username search basis, and then also the ability to have guided meditations. And that's really it initially. But so far within I think we have almost 115 users in roughly 2 months. All of them I've got a lot of really good feedback, and people really enjoy the application for what it is, and just continuing to build it so that there's, separation from other apps that exist in the space, is the main goal. And really happy of, that we're getting good feedback when it's not even the full thing that we intend yet.
Well, it sounds like it's on an upward trajectory, which is positive. And for someone who's listening to this who might want to download this app, where might someone find this app?
If someone goes to naunda.com, they'll have the capability of downloading either for Android or iOS.
Okay, and I'll give that again. That's M as in Mike, A as in Alpha, U as in under, N as in Nancy, D as in dog, A as in alpha.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
We noted, Joe, that you are a Division I basketball player, which means the demands on your time are significant in terms of balancing your academic, athletic, and personal schedules. You mentioned that your father had a health scare, and that was a challenge for your family, your mother, and for you coming home to try to support your parents in that regard. For the modern college athlete, there are also pressures like the transfer portal and NIL, and you talked about coming home to Richmond to be closer to your family. Those things can offer potential opportunity, but also present potentially stressful choices. Athlete or not, I think many people can relate to the idea that the sometimes hectic pace, as well as the rote drudgery of life, can be pretty taxing mentally. So I'm curious to know how, aside from using your app, you process all of that in prioritizing mental health in your own life.
That's a really good question. I've had an interesting journey in my own personal life. Like, I'm at a place in life as a person where I probably allot anywhere between like 1 to 2 hours a day of meditating, maybe like 30 to 40 minutes a day of reading the Bible, and then like an hour of just taking my dog for a walk. So, and I do like 20 to 30 minutes of yoga daily. So I have like 4.5, like 5 hours worth of time a day where I'm essentially like, to a casual, to the casual eye, like I'm essentially doing nothing, like very simple things. And I think like as I've gotten older, I've seen the value of, living like a very, slow paced and intentional with my time kind of life. And as I look around, I start to see like, that's not necessarily a reality that a lot of people can afford to live, or a reality that people think is possible. So my own personal life, just understanding that, taking time to do nothing, taking time to slow down, taking time to, check in with yourself, and taking time to do something that not a lot of other people would do, in the long run pays dividend for your own personal health.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Introspection, self-care, and wellness are very critical. It's something that there's a lot more conversation around in the healthcare space, especially post-COVID, because that was such a trying and taxing period for frontline clinicians. So that really is something that is much more discussed, and there is more attention and awareness around. So good to hear that you've incorporated those kinds of philosophies in your own life. Joe, recent years have seen some destigmatization of conversations around mental and behavioral health, which is obviously a positive development. You're a college basketball player. In basketball, NBA athletes like DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love have been open and candid in public about their own mental health struggles. In your view, what is the value of high-profile people being honest and vulnerable about their personal mental wellness?
I think it starts a trend. I think trend, sometimes can be a derogatory word. But in the same way that if we promote as a country that going to parties is the best thing in your life to do, then you're probably going to have more kids between like 14 and 22 who want to go to parties. And I think the same is true with mental health. If we have, more people who are influential, who are promoting being vulnerable, being open, being honest, and sharing their struggles, what we're actually doing is we're creating a culture of kids and people and young adults who are going to follow suit to what they look up to. So I think it's tremendous that, Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan can do stuff like that, because in the long run, it's going to pour back into itself.
Very true. Having role models who can model positive behavior, who can show vulnerability, who can make an example for young people coming behind them certainly is a good thing. Joe, I want to ask you about your own future. Looking forward, what's next for you? Is it basketball? And I'm speaking post-grad school and after you used up your college eligibility. Is it basketball? Is it technology? Is it behavioral health care? Some combination of those things? What do you see when you envision or map out your future?
This question is always hard. I'm not like, I'm a very in the moment kind of guy. Like, after this for sure, I know I'm going to eat dinner. I'm really hungry. But in the long run, I think the way I view it is just like, I'm going to do my best at basketball today. I'm going to set aside 1 to 2 hours to do my best at running my business. I'm going to do the best I can to set aside 1 to 2 hours a day to do my education. And in a year from now or 2 years from now, I'm just going to look up and, thank God for wherever that is. I'm not in necessity of one of those things, more so than I'm just grateful and have so much gratitude to be able to, put my hat on in so many places and continue to learn and meet cool people and continue to, gain knowledge and continue to share and continue to help people. And I think as long as being able to help people and being a genuine, authentic person is who I continue to be, where I'm at and what I'm doing means very little to me.
Well, you sound like a positive and grounded young adult, and I'm sure the future, whatever it holds, will be bright for you. So we certainly wish you the best of luck moving forward. We are almost done with this conversation, but before we go, Joe, we do have a tradition here on the Patients Come First podcast to close things out by asking our guests a pair of sort of quirky, fun questions. To keep things interesting, we have a list of 10 mystery questions. So if you select two numbers between 1 and 10, I will give you those corresponding questions.
I'm going to go 3 and let's go 4. 3 and 4.
Okay, 3 and 4. 3, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received, and why does it stick with you?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Maybe to just do your best to love other people. I think that advice is really good because I think to fully love other people, you have to actually love yourself and you have to think less of yourself. And the only way to get to that place is getting to a really good place in your mind and in your heart and in your soul. And once you get there, it's really easy to love other people. And I think when you truly live a life of choosing, and I'm not saying love like romantic, like, I don't know, like there's stars and hearts above your head. I'm saying like making an active choice to choose to love your friends, to choose to love a stranger that's having a rough day, to choose to love your significant other even when they're not at their best, to choose to love coworkers. It's like that changes your perception of life and your enjoyment and your relationships, which I think ultimately at the end of the day has huge importance and a huge factor in how we value our lives and how we determine how good it is.
Inner peace through selflessness, self-love, and following the golden rule. That is great advice. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And then you selected number 4. This one is perhaps less philosophical. Which, if any of the following things, do you consider most plausible?
Okay.
Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, UFOs and aliens, or if none of those apply, do you believe in something else along those lines? Let us know what it is.
That's interesting. So I obviously think human beings are grounded in reality. I think for tons of different people, they try to say like, this is my reality. I think there's one, whether you agree on it, it just depends on who you are. But like, as I started the conversation, I am like a person of faith. And like, despite the fact that I don't think I'm going to walk out of my apartment and see Bigfoot or UFO or the Loch Ness monsters, I wouldn't like hold it against God that like those things are impossible to exist. Like that would be my answer for that.
Okay. Keep an open mind to the possibility that things beyond our awareness and understanding could be out there.
Yeah, good. I'm not saying yes or no.
Yes, you're not co-signing. I got it. Well, listen, Joe, I want to thank you for taking some time to speak with us and for sharing your perspective and candidly your wisdom, which is sometimes uncommon in younger adults. So really good to hear your perspective. And with that, that's going to bring us to the close of another episode of the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association's Patients Come First podcast. If you like what you heard, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and subscribe so that you know when new episodes are available. And we want to once again thank our guest, Joe Bamisile, for joining us today. So thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you again for having me. It means a lot.